Thank you, Martina, Cahirlock, and thanks to Liam for inviting us down to tell our story. So I'm just going to give you some information with regards to the Town Team Initiative in Roscommon and the story so far. I'll just give you a brief backdrop as to how the town teams were set up. I'll give you some information on their progress to date, and then we'll talk about some projects that we've developed so far. And then I'll hand you over to Gareth from Castlereagh Town Team, and he'll do his best Robbie Williams impression, I suppose, as no better man can. So when Roscommon County Council were collecting information for the development of our local economic community plan, we started to see some worrying trends during that phase. Obviously, some of the reading that we were getting back from the information collection was concerning. There was a brain drain of our younger working age group. We had one of the lowest graduate retention rates in the country, a low level of entrepreneurship when compared to national averages. Our population increase was below the Western and the national averages. Our small towns and villages, many have had unfortunately suffered decline. There were dereliction in some of our town centres, an underperforming tourism sector, and low levels of new job creation. So some worrying figures indeed. And unfortunately, as a result of some of those figures and because of some other reasons, this picture you see behind me became a harsh reality for some of the areas within our town centres. Now, that's not a picture of anywhere in Roscommon, so don't be trying to identify it to anybody. So following on from that, obviously there are many reasons why some of our town centres were suffering from dereliction. The economic downturn was obviously one of the big reasons for that, emigration that arose out of that. The new reality of online sales unfortunately has an effect on the town centre's ability to meet the demands of society, and with that you had the closure of some commercial units, a move away from family-run businesses with the overhead living quarters. Unfortunately, people became obsessed with their bigger sites in the countryside, and out of this you would have the slow weakening removal of the heart of some of our town centres. As a reason coming out of that, people lost interest. Sometimes community spirit had faded in areas. The broader social, cultural and economic need of the towns sometimes wasn't developed, and the stronger towns around the country and the county moved forward and took advantage of the situation. From the council's perspective, why was it a good time for us to start revitalising our towns? I suppose the chief reason for it being a good time was the change in the Local Government Act in 2014, which was a directive for change for local authorities to refocus on community and enterprise development. And under that change, the Putting People First programme, which was an action programme for effective local government change, which puts communities and people at the heart of development within their towns. So how did Roscommon County Council adapt that change in the Local Government Act and put it into effect in Roscommon? Well, some of the key actions that happened are elected members had the vision to choose to forgo a 1% reduction in rates, and out of that 1% reduction agreed to adopt the Business, Enterprise and Innovation Fund. This fund is used to support the town teams, and their annual budget comes out of this fund, and the councillors then agreed to adopt the town team concept. Also at this stage there was obviously a rates incentive scheme that was also introduced at this time to encourage new businesses to set up in premises that have been vacant for over 12 months. That was just another action that happened at that time. So what are town teams? A town team is an umbrella committee of representatives from the town's community, business, enterprise and voluntary sectors. They're supported by agencies involved in the rural and urban development of their towns, including the Local Enterprise Office and the Leader Partnership, and obviously the Roscommon County Council themselves. The town teams are tasked with providing a collaborative approach to identifying priorities within towns and planning for the town's future, with a specific emphasis on the town centres. Some of the core principles of the town teams. One of the principles was that those that live and work in the towns should be involved in the design and delivery of the solutions for their towns. Town teams are autonomous. They have autonomy over their budgets and the projects that they choose to support. the council advise and support them with regard to the expenditure of those finances, but ultimately it is the town team's decision. Carrying on, one of the principles was that the town teams were required to adopt a constitution. We used a similar platform for the 6 constitutions of the town teams, and they were allowed to adopt the constitution to suit the needs of their own towns, but it had to be adapted. And one of the main principles is that the correct procedures with regard to the expenditure of public finances must be followed by all town teams with regard to procurement and other regulations within that regard. Following on from that, each town had to create a vision and an identity. We worked closely with each town to elaborate on that vision and thrash it out and what the vision for each area was. Funding will roll over, so towns are allowed to roll their 5-year funding over to the start of the first year if they saw that they had a project which was deemed worthy of the 5 years budget, and also that can work in reverse. If they have a long-term project that they wish to develop at the end of the 5 years, they can roll their funding over to that project as well. Town teams were required to develop annual and 5-year plans. These plans were required to link back in with the objectives of the local economic community plan of the council to ensure there were synergies there. We encouraged the town teams very much to use their annual budgets to secure match funding for bigger, larger capital projects such as the town and village renewal scheme. And that's in order to allow the towns the correct capital funding so they can develop sustainable projects and legacy projects that will have a real lasting impact on their towns. Just some of the support that the local authorities have provided to the town teams. There's a town team coordinator, that's myself. I act as a conduit between the town teams and the various departments within the council, so I would have regular interaction with the town teams, and whatever projects we're implementing at that stage, I would be the conduit to the municipal district engineer or the arts officer or the heritage officer, depending on what project it needs to be implemented. Obviously, we worked with the town teams at the initial stages with extensive capacity building and facilitation to allow them to build up their vision and develop their action plans. We assisted some of the towns to carry out town health checks just to get a good vision of what the current state of affairs was for each town. We provided social inclusion training at the beginning for the town teams to ensure that minority groups were represented in each team, and training to allow them to seek ways in which they could approach these minority groups. We assisted town teams to establish themselves as companies limited by guarantee. That was really just to ensure the safety of everybody involved, that everyone was safe with regard to the expenditure of public finances, and the safest way to do that was to allow the town teams to set up as companies limited by guarantees. Just to show an example of the fluidity of the initiative, we had a new chief executive after a year of the town team initiative, and the new chief executive came in and had the vision and decided that a town planner should be appointed to work with the town teams to help them to develop plans for the core town centre redevelopment. So that was a very visionary move by the chief executive at the time. So I'll just give you some brief updates on the town centre planning unit and some of the work they have done to date. So some of the aims and challenges: ensuring the retention of a strong residential community at the heart of town centre life, providing a network of high quality urban spaces, and the development of a network of complementary functions to sustain the evening, nighttime and daytime economy within our town centres. Some of the challenges that the town centre planning unit face: they are required in some places to design in flood zones. I have been informed by the planning unit that this is a cycle, so at the minute we are locked in a 100-year cycle with regard to a flood zone, so it's more likely that it will get worse before it gets better, and that's a significant challenge that the planners have to work around each day. The design challenge of quality and choice in town centre housing, different requirements for different towns, inaccessibility to backlands and redundant configuration. What they mean by redundant configuration is when our towns were initially developed back hundreds of years ago, the backs of all the premises would face out onto the amenities such as canals and rivers, and the reason for that was obviously we didn't have an appropriate waste system, so the rivers and canals were obviously used to dispose of the waste at that time. So one of the big challenges that the planners now have is to try and turn that around and now get our key town centre premises facing out onto these amenities such as canals and rivers, and making appropriate use of them. These are just some of the solutions that the Town Centre Planning Unit have come up with. Concept of enclosure, active frontage, functional use, and creating more walkable settlements within the town centre itself. So the first set of plans that the Town Centre Planning Unit have officially developed were the plans for Boyle. They developed a fantastic plan for Boyle Town Centre and broke the centre up into 3 specific areas of focus. As you can see, there's significant public realm enhancement plans within those plans. And the main thing for Boyle, which would be seen as our key tourism town, obviously because they have Lough Key Forest Park on their doorstep. And the main thing that the planners are working on there is to have a seamless transition between Lough Key Forest Park and the town centre through the greenway system and cycleways and walkways that they will be trying to develop within the plans to take people from the centre of Lough Key into the centre of Boyle. The big news, or the big result out of the Boyle Town Centre plans, was that it was the only town of its size to be specifically referenced in the Ireland 2040 plans. So that was a significant achievement for the Town Centre Planning Unit and for Boyle Town Team themselves, and we're hopeful that that will be something we'll be working with going forward. So just some of the progress so far for the town teams. As I've said already, they've established as companies limited by guarantee. They've recently held their first AGMs, and they've compiled their annual returns to the CRO. Their official governance structures are in place, so the town teams are required to report back to the council's municipal districts. There's a county forum where the town teams, the 6 town team officers, will come together on a bi-monthly basis and share updates on projects with other towns and possibly put forward some suggestions for projects that would benefit the whole county rather than just the towns themselves. And then the actual structure of the town team. So it's an umbrella committee generally of between 15 to 20 stakeholders, and those stakeholders are broken up into project groups, and we encourage the town teams to get those project groups to report back to the town team committee on a monthly basis. Each town team has their visions identified and 6 action plans developed, and work is well underway on the short, medium and long-term projects within those plans. So just on some of the short-term initiatives, we worked with the town teams to develop an identity and a brand. We tried to come up with this just to stop towns competing for the same pots of funding and competing for the same projects. Towns always have some people in towns always have an ability to look over their shoulder at what's happening next door and why isn't this happening in our town. But for real progress, you know, we have to identify a key brand for each town and work with them to develop that brand and focus for that brand. So Ballahadreen, we're currently working on the creativity brand. There's a feasibility study underway there to develop a creativity hub in the town. Boyle, as I've spoken out, tourism and arts with Lough Key Forest Park and Boyle Abbey on their doorstep. That's their unique brand. Castlerea, we're working on the food and drink enterprise. Roscommon County Council recently established a food hub in Castlerea to meet a weakness that we identified through our local economic community plan with regard to food incubation enterprise space in the county. Monksland, we are trying to get them to work on the Meditech Pharma. We've plans for an innovation centre in Monksland. Roscommon Town team has organically grown towards the healthy, family-friendly team for the town. And Strokestown, obviously Strokestown Park House sits right in the middle of the town, so we will be working with the town team to get them to bring people out from Strokestown Park House and get them to engage with the town centre in Strokestown. Some of the medium-term projects, the mural you see on your left-hand side is of the famous mythical figure of Una Waughan. Those of you that are not aware, there's a famous story around Castle Island in Lough Key Forest Park, and she is very much the star of that story. So there was just a project in Boyle involving the town team and a local school and a local artist, where we had a 1-week workshop between the artists and local school kids, and at the end of that workshop the school kids were allowed to paint a mural on their town wall, which is not in that picture itself, it's down on the left hand side, and the artist then developed this mural in a back centre premises in the town centre. So it's just an example of how something innovative like that can open up the back streets of our towns and really kind of kickstart the regeneration plan there. On the right hand side, that picture is of Boyle Courthouse. The courthouse in Boyle became redundant in 2014 with the changes in local government. The town council there was abolished, so we needed to basically reinvent a use for the courthouse. So a subcommittee of Boyle town team got together and got funding under the Town and Village Renewal Scheme in 2016 and completely regenerated the courthouse. As you will see in the photo there's a raised platform. Eventually, that raised platform will host one of the largest model rail networks in the country. So it's basically adapted the courthouse into a tourism amenity for the benefit of the town. Some of the other medium-term projects, Monksland on the outskirts of Athlone is a newer settlement. So one of their key objectives is to develop more community facilities to bring the town together and create that focus of a town centre that the other towns would have already had. So developing a playground was one of the big things there. They got funding through the Town and Village Renewal Scheme for that. That's the Castlerea website there. I'll let Gareth speak to you a bit more detail about that project. And that's the food hub, a picture of the food hub premises in Castlerea. As I spoke to you, that's just one of the longer term projects that the council are working on in Castlerea, building food incubation space to support the small and medium enterprise sector and training needs within the county for the food industry. That's just a picture of the innovation centre plan that we have for Roscommon. So we have a premises purchased in Monksland, and operations are very much underway with regard to the development of an innovation centre there. We also have longer term plans to develop an innovation centre in Roscommon, and once those two innovation centres are developed, we hope to work with the innovation centre in Ballinasloe and create a hub of innovation centres within the region. That's a picture of the youth space in Castlerea. Gareth will probably be able to talk to you in more detail about that project, but it's just another example of an innovative use for a derelict town centre premises. That premises was the old fire station in Castlerea, and the town team had the vision to get a long-term lease off the council for use of the premises and turn it into a fantastic youth space for the town. That's just a picture of the interactive heritage tour. So Roscommon Town Team recently launched an interactive heritage tour. They have developed a QR code system, so you will go to the individual amenities such as Roscommon Castle or Roscommon Abbey. There will be a QR code there. You scan the QR code on your phone and a short video will come up on your phone, basically of local people and local stakeholders telling the story and the history of the actual heritage sites within the town, and it's a fantastic stage tour that they launched recently. I'd advise any of you to have a look at that on YouTube. All the videos are there. Very interesting, and a lot of history there that people wouldn't be aware of within Roscommon town. Okay, so just some information on why the Town Team Initiative has worked so far. Previously, some of our towns would have been demotivated. Now very much there's a new spirit of self-help amongst the stakeholders of the towns themselves. Before, there was a lot of groups and a lot of activity within towns, but there wasn't much collaboration. The pride of place was always there, but the platform for delivery was not. Now through the Town Team platform, that platform for collaboration is there. Before, there wasn't as much collaboration between the agencies coordinating community development within the towns. Now there's a far more collaborative approach among Roscommon County Council, the Local Enterprise Office and the Leader Partnership working together. One of the questions that we would have often been asked at the initial stages of development was, why will this approach be different from other approaches? So we had to work with the town teams to develop projects and trust and respect through project development, and show that we weren't just there to talk about development, but we were there to work about projects and develop a trust and respect through project development. Just some of the other projects that have been developed in the other towns to date. Some local heritage and recreation trails have been developed in places like Castlerea. Gareth will be able to talk to you about that, and those link in with other larger walking trails such as the recently launched Bear Breffni Way and Suck Valley Way. Innovative initiatives to tackle town centre dereliction for use of accommodation for tourism, and obviously, as I've spoke, for the youth facility in Castlerea. Business friendly car parking initiatives. That's just where the town teams came together and developed a green parking space outside key town centre premises. This green parking space clearly indicates that you're only allowed to park there for 1 hour, so it ensures that there's a regular flow of traffic outside key premises and nobody is blocking up those key car parking spaces for the whole day, and blocking up obviously activity in the town centre as a result. Roscommon Town Team have recently installed a significant CCTV system within the town centre. Community retail surveys in local towns. Business mentor sessions were hosted through the local enterprise office and the town teams in each individual town, so just bringing those services out into the individual towns throughout the county. development of digital communication platforms. Castlereagh have a fantastic app, which I'm sure Gareth will be happy to talk to you about. Derelict premises rejuvenation schemes, installation of permanent and temporary streetscape enhancements, and Boyletown team have been the pilot age-friendly town within Roscommon and have developed a number of initiatives under that heading also.
Cool.
5. That's my warning to exit stage left, folks. So just some of our learning points to date. Some of the difficulties when starting up, some town teams there may have been over-representation from stronger groups within the towns. To alleviate that, we would advise those groups that have a stronger membership to separate themselves into different working groups to ensure that they don't have a monopoly on any specific project, and to ensure that there's a shared workload across the groups. Group politics, we advise people to leave their group politics at the door with regard to their individual groups or their individual political allegiances. That was the advice we gave at the door, and that was very much taken on board. Obviously there's a difficulty with demands and volunteers' time. These people have families and jobs, so we try and support and disseminate as much information and ease the burden on these individuals where possible. Some people have a fear of administration with regards to the bigger projects such as the Town and Village Renewal Scheme, so we try and work collaboratively with groups, working with them on their expression of interest forms, and then working with them to develop larger applications when those arise as well. Inclusiveness is a difficulty for some towns, that they just don't feel they have the skills or the approaches to approach these socially inclusive groups, so we generally advise them to evaluate their membership on an annual basis, and as I spoke about previously, we provided social inclusion training just to provide a training as to how they might be able to approach those groups. So that's our learnings from the town team process so far. It's very much an initiative that is growing day by day and has been a fantastic learning experience for the council and has had its many successes, with the obvious bump in the road here and there. But it's very much an initiative we're very proud of. And I think for myself, from my own point of view, the most enjoyable aspect of it was getting to work with people like Gareth, who have a real passion about the development of their town, and providing platforms for those people to speak about the pride and the passion they have in their town, and to showcase the fantastic projects that they have developed in their towns. So I'll hand you over to Gareth now. Thanks very much for your time.